and it's the two teams that we wouldn't necessarily expect to be undefeated. Could be three teams if the Giants beat the Cowboys tonight. But how do you feel after week 3 Sunday? Because I know for me yesterday, I was not okay. I needed a glass of wine at the end of the day yesterday.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. It was an exciting I feel like it's every week the bar gets raised. And when you look at the landscape of what this NFL is, there are a lot of very average to below average teams.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of greatness. And I was joking with a friend last night, someone else in the media world, and I was saying it's, we talk about in the finance world, the erosion of the middle class. The NFL middle class is just becoming completely a thing of the past. It seems like there's only two types of teams in this world now. The teams that are really good, the Bills and the Dolphins in that category, the Eagles, etc., or the teams that are like really bad. Like there's not a lot of average teams anymore. It's like we're getting these extreme, these polarizing, weeks in the NFL where teams just completely either shit the bed or way overperform expectations. Very hard from a gambling perspective when the numbers really aren't holding true at all. But we're seeing teams just blow through numbers, and we're seeing totals, especially unders, really start to become a thing of prominence. Like example is that Bills-Dolphins game yesterday. I mean, that game never had a chance in the second half to go over. Now, I was an idiot, and I only bet the first half under. I should have bet the full game under. But, you look at games like that where totals that are really high or favorites that are really expected to win, throw the Chiefs in that category too. It's hard. It's hard to stay consistent in this league week to week, and makes betting on it very difficult.
Yeah, no, totally. And after 3 weeks, I know we still have one more game tonight to finish out the slate. There are only 2 3-0 quarterbacks in the NFL. Tua, which probably no one would have said at the beginning of the season because people were very down on the Dolphins, but they've looked solid through 3 weeks. We're going to get into that in a second. And then Jalen Hurts, who's looked absolutely phenomenal through 3 weeks. I know after week 1 when they played the Lions and we're like, ooh, are they as good as we initially thought? And then they came out on the next week 2, and steamrolled on Monday Night Football. And this week we saw what they were able to do again. The Eagles are looking red hot. Before we get into our winners and losers and overreactions on teams for 3 weeks, let's get into some injuries. First of all, Mac Jones went down at one of the last plays in the fourth quarter in that game. Ankle looked really gross in that spot. I thought it was going to be worse than it is, but it's believed to have suffered a high ankle sprain against the Ravens. And he's going to undergo an MRI on Monday to confirm the diagnosis and determine the severity of the injury. But watching that video, it looked kind of gross. Like it wasn't as gross as the Trey Lance injury, but at the same time, I thought it was going to be worse than a high ankle sprain at that point.
Yeah, it looked bad. The picture of him being paraded down the stairs is really bad. Like it looked bad. And you saw that line
fact
flip.
That he couldn't put pressure on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up my notes here from the line moves. Packers go from 6.5 now, reopen at 9.5. So I'm hearing about that. Tells you about a 3 to 4 point move from Jones to Brian Hoyer. Also a revenge game for him, right? Wasn't he involved in the Packers in some way? I don't know. I might be wrong about that. But anyways, it's probably going to be Hoyer this week, barring some kind of miracle. Because I'll be honest, you're right. It did not look good. It did not look good for Mac Jones. So there's your 3-point move from the Packers game to the Patriots with Mac Jones probably out. Obviously monitor this week. But that's a significant line move and a significant quarterback injury.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he does play. To be honest with you, a lot of times those high ankle sprains end up being those nagging injuries that you're out for like 4 to 6 weeks at that point, because those things don't go away unless you rest it, right? And it's happening in week 3. You still got, 15 weeks left, if my math is correct, of the NFL season. You're going to need him for some of those more important games getting down to the stretch if they do want to make a push to get a wild card spot into the playoffs. So going to be interesting to see if he will play next week or if he won't play. Something to keep in mind all week. All right, let's get into our week 3 winners and losers after Sunday. The only 2 teams 3-0. Only 2 teams are 3-0, which is, like, if you look at it, Jared, and I know you're a stats guy, and I was texting with my dad about it, That's basically statistically impossible that only 2 teams are 3-0 after 3 weeks. The Giants could also be up there if they end up winning tonight against the Cowboys. Who is your winner after 3 weeks of NFL football and seeing how these teams are playing? Week 1, we see maybe a baseline. Week 2, we see an overreaction. Week 3, we kind of see things level out and maybe more of what we're going to see heading forward into the rest of the NFL season.
So I owe the entire city of Philadelphia an apology. Totally got that one. Totally got that game wrong. One of the worst picks that I hopefully will make all season. I really hope so, because there was not one moment after the first half, really, where I felt like Washington was in that game. And I don't really think it was much that Washington did. I think it was all Philly's defense. And that was my whole handicap, was I thought Philly's defense was a little bit sus. I thought that maybe there were some holes there. They didn't grade out very well tackling wise the first couple of weeks. They were susceptible to the run game, and their defensive line hadn't gotten a ton of pressure. Well, all of those things changed drastically. Now, maybe you could put a little bit of that on Washington. But I think we have to really start taking the Eagles seriously as the best team in the NFC. And you take Tampa Bay's issues. Green Bay looks a little bit pedestrian of sorts at times. Who else is there in the NFC? The Rams look a little bit off too. I'm going through the teams that were in the Final Four last year in the NFC. It's Tampa, it's LA, it's San Francisco, who looks also a little shaky with Jimmy G. Like, what other team right now in the NFC looks the part? It's a very weak year for the NFC, frankly. And I think Eagles right now, today, are the best team in the NFC. So tip my cap. Wow. Apologize to all of the Eagles fans that I were tilting, because I do a weekly hit on a Philly radio show. And they were giving me crap about my Washington pick too this week. And I'm going to have to eat crow tomorrow when I go back there. But Philly right now is the top of the heap, I think, in the conference.
I totally agree with you. When I look at the winner from this past week, Eagles were up there. I wanted to let you, obviously, there's 2 teams for me, the Eagles and the Dolphins, needless to say. So I wanted you to talk about the Eagles. I'm going to talk about the Dolphins because Mike McDaniel at this point is up there for the coach of the year. The team looks really good, both sides of the ball. And you look at every single week so far through 3 weeks, they've won basically in 3 different ways. Week 1, it was a super physical game. Week 2, we saw a wild comeback victory against the Ravens. The defense didn't necessarily look great in week 2, but the offense was able to hold it together. Week 3, the defense held the Bills to a 50% red zone conversion rate. Didn't allow them to score a touchdown at all in the second half. So we're seeing different parts of this team step up at different times and help each other out. I'm a fan of the Dolphins at this point of the season. I'm a fan of Tua. And I actually really like that people were very down on them at the beginning of the year. And as Geno Smith would say, they wrote me off, but I ain't right back. The Dolphins 3-0 after week 3. It's going to be interesting to see next week who they have on their slate. Obviously, they're going up against the Bengals Thursday Night Football. We only have a couple days to wait for with that. And the Bengals, I know they're going to come out a little bit desperate too after going 1-2 through 3 weeks of the season. But the Dolphins seem like the real deal at this point. Mike McDaniel seems like he could be the coach of the year. Tua seems great. And I love that they've won all 3 weeks in different ways. And it just shows the versatility of this team and what they have at that point. Last week, offense. This week, defense. I don't know. How do you feel about the Dolphins after 3 weeks?
Fantastic. So before the season started, I made a win total. But I told you about this one because Michigan's involved. Michigan's over 9.5 wins, parlayed. Circa here in town lets you do cross sport win totals, which is awesome because you don't really parlay those very often, but they give you the opportunity to, and I took it. Michigan's over 9.5 wins with Miami Dolphins over 9 wins.
Let's go.
A nice little parlay. I mean, it's looking fantastic right now. I did not expect 3-0. But enough about me. I agree with you that Miami's offense, and again, when I look at the nerd numbers and I see what Tua has done, it's really hard to say that they are not a contender. Now, their defense needs to figure things out. Their defense right now is bottom 10 in efficiency. That is going to be what, unlike the Eagles that have a top 10 defensive efficiency right now, the Dolphins need to get better on that side of the ball. They were aided yesterday, and I knew the weather was going to be a factor. I knew it was, but I was wrong about the timing of it. I thought that they would maybe conserve some energy early in the game because they knew it was so hot and humid down there in Florida so they could last. But really what happened was they went balls to the wall for the first half. There were 28 points scored in the first half of that game and 12 in the second half. So I got the sequencing wrong, but the heat was a major factor in that game. And you could tell that Miami is just the defensive side of the ball is what needs to get better. But if they can figure that part out, if Byron Jones gets healthy and Xavier and Howard starts to play better and they get a little better up front on the defensive line, this is a team, Josh Boyer's scheme is good, and this is a team that has all the talent there. They just need to play a little better. Offensively, through 3 weeks, the Miami Dolphins have the most efficient offense in the NFL. Like,
wild.
Wild. And Tua is legit. So, yeah, they are for real. They are for real.
The Dolphins are for real this season. A team that may not be as for real as we both initially expected heading into the year. The Raiders. What the heck is going on in Las Vegas? I know they're both of our losers for the week. I'll let you go first and I'll add on.
Well, I'll give you one number, and that's really the only number that I need to give you. And then I'll let you give me your take. But the Raiders are 0-3, so they've lost to 3 teams. Those 3 teams are 0-6 in their other games, getting outscored by 16 points per game. So they're losing to bad teams. It's not like they're just losing to good teams. You could make a case that good teams are supposed to beat bad teams. They're losing to the bad teams. So the Raiders have problems right now, frankly.
I know. And going into this season, everyone was like so high on the Raiders. They're going to win their division. I know their division is one of the toughest in the league. But at this point, they're the only 0-3 team in the entire league right now. And this was supposed to be one of the easiest stretches of their schedule. And I mean, the Chargers and Cardinals, Titans, no one thought that they would be the top of the league, but no one thought they would be the bottom of the league. It's not like they're playing the Jets, the Lions, and the Texans. I don't know. But this stretch was supposed to be considered decently easy for them, especially with the pieces that they acquired in the offseason. Those pieces are not working together right now. Everyone thought Josh McDaniels was going to come in here and use the pieces that they did put together and be ready to go, hot start right from the beginning. This team still has to play the Chiefs twice, Jared, the Broncos twice, the Rams, the 49ers. And their offense has only scored 25 points over the last game and a half. I thought maybe after last week we might be overreacting with how the game ended, that fumble from Hunter Renfrow, the Cardinals coming back in overtime. This week, I don't think we're overreacting. The Raiders need to figure it out, and they need to figure it out quick because they're playing in one of the top 2 toughest divisions in the National Football League. They need to figure it out right now, or else their season is going to be over. And a lot of people are going to be asking questions. Why couldn't Josh McDaniels put together the pieces that they got in the offseason? What's going on with Derek Carr? What's going on with Devontae Adams? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Another team, that not even team, but special team that I think was the loser in week 3 was the Chiefs special team. This was the biggest upset for me in week 3. And I don't necessarily think this was the Colts beating the Chiefs. It was the Chiefs beating the Chiefs. You look at Sky Moore, poor guy, rookie, muffed the punt, gave the Colts the ball at the 4-yard line. He got nervous, let the next one bounce down, and they ended up touching it on the 1-yard line. And then Harrison Butker, God, they missed him because Matt Amendola that missed that 34-yard field goal and an extra point. That's an 11-point difference at that point. And, Andy Reid didn't have any confidence in their special teams at that point. They went for the fake field goal attempt, and they didn't make it. The Chiefs special teams were the biggest loser for me in week 3. I don't know how you feel about that, but they need to get it together. The Chiefs lost themselves the game. The Colts did not win that game. They're going to bounce back in week 3. It's the Chiefs, which I know that you want to talk about as overreaction, is the Chiefs and the Bills losing. We're all going to be like, oh, my God, the Bills lost. Are they okay? Oh, my God, the Chiefs lost. Are they okay? The Chiefs still looked good. It was their special teams that looked bad, right?
Chiefs are going to be fine. Patrick Mahomes played relatively well. a little bit on the completion percentage side was a little bit down, but the numbers that I'm looking at here for Patrick Mahomes were good enough to win that game. You're
Yeah.
right. They kind of bumbled. Listen, when you play that many games in the NFL, variance happens. And they're also Harrison Butker, I would say, is a very important piece to that puzzle. The Bills are going to be fine too.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Bills played in arguably, and I know cold weather matters and wind and rain. I bet if you asked most players, the conditions the Bills played in yesterday, probably they hate more than cold. Because your guys were let's just leave it at this. There were a ton of injuries yesterday, and I have this like alert system, one of the Twitter handles that pops up on my screen every time someone leaves a game. I had multiple alerts. This person left the game, and they put in parentheses what the injury was, and the injury was heat.
Heat. Yeah. Yeah.
How often do you see that?
I will say, I've covered a lot of games at that stadium. Well, not covered a lot, covered 2 games at that stadium. But the home team is in the shade, depending on the time of the day. And the away team is sitting in the sun. They are baking. And, I remember covering a game that the Hurricanes played against Central Connecticut State University, who's that team? Exactly. They ended up getting crushed in that game. But I walked over to their sideline, and they have, fans blowing in their face, towels over, wet towels,
those
dumping
conditions
water on themselves. Tough. Anything. And it's it would be not as tough as if they were in the shade and then the field was in the sun. But it's the fact that the Bills are literally baking some freaking chocolate chip cookies out there in the sun. Yeah. And then they have to go on the field and be able to play too. And then you drink too much water, and then the water is jiggling around in your stomach, and you feel nauseous, similar to what happened to Stetson Bennett last week, where Kirby Smart said he drank too much water, and so he felt nauseous and sick. I'm like, is that even a thing? I don't know, but those are crazy scenarios. For me, an overreaction is the Jaguars. And believe you me, I love myself a good underdog. I love a good underdog story coming out and proving people wrong. I know the Jags at this point are sitting at the top of the AFC South, but everyone's saying the Jaguars are the best team in the AFC South, and Trevor Lawrence might be up for MVP. That is an overreaction at this point. I know we looked up those stats, and 2 quarterbacks right now in the National Football League have 5 touchdowns and only 1 or less interceptions. And that is Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes. You're putting those two guys together, something I never would have expected at the beginning of the season. Doug Peterson did a really good job of putting Trevor Lawrence in a spot to find success. The offense is kind of built to his strike in that point. I love Christian Kirk and what he's been able to do. The Jags could be a wild card spot. The defenses hold the Colts and the Chargers to 10 combined points or less over the last 2 games, but they're going to play Philly next week, and I think that we're going to see more of what we can actually expect from this Jaguars team. But through 3 weeks, yes, they're looking really good. Trevor Lawrence is looking solid. It might be a little bit of an overreaction, though. I'm interested to see how they do and perform against the Philadelphia Eagles on the hot streak that they're in right now in week 4. Then come back to me. Maybe I'll be wrong after, who knows, the Jags, God forbid, win that game, and I'll be like, sorry, guys, that's on me. I was wrong. But I think we're going to see next week how good the Jaguars actually are. So we have one more game left in week 3, and it is Monday Night Football. For more on that, let's bring in Prop Holliday to talk a little bit more about Monday Night Football. Props, the game that everyone's been waiting for all week. Battle of the 2 powerhouses in the Giants and the Cowboys. Monday Night Football showdown. Prop Holliday, how excited are you for this one? Ooh, we got the glasses today. What's up, glasses?
I do. I feel smart. I picked 2 overs and a touchdown score in an 11-10 game on Sunday Night Football. I woke up feeling intelligent. So thank you for noticing the glasses.
We got 2 glasses. Should I put mine on? I have them right here. I can wear mine too, guys. We can all have our glasses on today. Why
Nerd
not?
Day. Nerd.
I'll put on my glasses for this segment. All right. The Cowboys able to win in week 2, even without Dak Prescott. Giants now 2-0 to start the season, something that maybe no one would have expected. Brian Dable, they love him. They're bought into his system. They held Carolina to 275 total yards of offense last week. How do you feel heading into this Monday Night Football game with a total that is set extremely low? How do you bet props for a spot like this?
I mean, I'm surprisingly optimistic. I'm hoping more for like last Thursday night football was a little bit higher scoring than we anticipated with the Browns Steelers. So Cooper Rush was able to move the ball successfully last week. He had a start against Minnesota last year. They won that on the road. I do think this game's going to be a little bit more higher scoring than the over/under indicates. So it should be way more entertaining than last night's game.
Yeah, well, it can't be any worse. It can't be any less entertaining than last. At one point last night, we were staring down the barrel of a 7-5 final score. It is impossible. It is impossible for things to be worse than last. I thought last night was the most unimpressive football game I've watched all year. And there's been a bunch. All right, let's get into some of the other props that you like today. So the interesting part about tonight's game, and I'll get into this a little later when I give out my play of the day, is we do have Michael Gallup returning for the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. So that changes the dynamic. And I know we're already dealing with a tough handicap anyways because we're going from Prescott to Rush. But now we have to also factor in the deep threat, Michael Gallup returning. You could say that that's a positive for Cooper Rush. You could say maybe that's a positive for CeeDee Lamb. I think you could also make the case it's a negative for CeeDee Lamb. What say you, Prop Holiday?
I actually think that Michael Gallup's return, I think, is more likely to eat into Noah Brown's targets than CeeDee Lamb. And for that, I'm on CeeDee Lamb over 4.5 receptions. I got this when it opened up. It was minus 115. Since then, the line's been all over the place. You can still get it at 4.5 right now, but it's minus 175. It's juiced to the gills. You can get it at over 5.5 at plus 124. I'd actually prefer the 5.5 compared to the juice at minus 175. So in 2 Cooper Rush starts, Lamb saw 8 targets and 10 targets. He turned that into 6 receptions and 7 receptions. So he's hit this in both Cooper Rush starts. The Giants are ranked 22nd best coverage group, 29th in generating a pass rush. There's no Leonard Williams tonight, but we will see for the first time Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari for the Giants defense. So at 4.5, I got it when it opened. I feel great about that. I would scale back your unit size, but still feel pretty good at over 5.5 at plus odds.
The Cowboys, guys, are 15-5 over their last 20 games in this rivalry, and some of that has to do to Ezekiel Elliott, which I know I'm on his anytime touchdown prop today. You're on his anytime touchdown prop today, and you're also on his over rush attempts. Tell me more why we love our boy Zeke.
So it's 14.5 is the number. He hit it in both Cooper Rush starts, so there is a precedent for this. He averaged 71% of the snaps in those games. My assumption is that Kellen Moore wants Elliott on the field so he can sell the thought of the run and just give Rush a higher chance of success on passing downs. It is worth mentioning last week, Rush completed 83% of his passes in the play action. So if Kellen Moore is smart, let's go back to the play action a little bit more. And that means Zeke on the field at a higher percent. So over 14.5 rush attempts. After watching Christian McCaffrey rip the Giants for 6 yards per carry, I think Elliott can get going tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Sorry, Lauren. I was looking at something else. All right, Richie James. Okay. Rick James getting in the end zone tonight. Tell me why the 5 fingers said to the face slap for Richie James.
Richie James. So there's no Kadarius Toney tonight. There's no Wan'Dale Robinson. It's going to be Sterling Shepard. It's going to be Saquon Barkley really leading the forefront of that offense. But this guy's been consistent through 2 weeks. Both games, 6 targets. Both games, 5 receptions. I'm getting plus 440, almost 4.5 to 1 on a guy who I think is going to be the third offensive option. I do think they're going to sell out to stop Saquon Barkley and keep that offense from going. So I really like it because of the value. He's going to get targets. He's going to be on the field. Richie James to score a touchdown is plus 440. If that juice is not high enough for you, Ezekiel Elliott to score 2 touchdowns is 10 to 1, but that's a little wishful thinking.
Now we're going off the rails.
Zeke did it. He did it last year against the Giants. He has 9 touchdowns in 10 games against the Giants. So it depends.
Do you track how many times we've seen 2 touchdowns in a game by one player this year? I'm guessing it's probably only happened like once or twice the whole season in the league, right? How many players this season have scored 2 touchdowns in a game so far? I'd be willing to bet it's happened less than 5 times.
It's 100% more than one person, and now you've given me something to do the rest of my morning. So thank you, Jared. I will circle back. I will circle back and get you the data on this. But there is a precedent. Zeke did this last year against the Giants. So
That's fair.
Yeah,
I feel like this year though, scoring is down though. The unders are hitting. The unders are hitting more than the overs. That's a fact. I feel like scoring is down across the league this year, early on, and I'm assuming that is impacting the touchdown props to a very high degree.
It is, and you pointed out last time we talked, I'm picking 22% on my anytime touchdown scores. I think it's something like 6 and
that's about what they hit at in the game, is about 20%.
Yeah. So I got to get better at it, but it doesn't mean it can't be done.
No, I'm on Ezekiel Elliott anytime touchdown too at plus 155. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet this season. It feels like the right spot for it. I love getting it at the plus money prop. He had 12 touchdowns throughout last year. The Giants haven't allowed a rushing touchdown yet this year, but at some point they're due, just like Patty Ice was due to throw an interception at some point, which we saw in last game. He's going to get a lot of carries. Cooper Rush under center. I think they ran the ball about 50% of the time last week, maybe a little bit less than that. I know Tony Pollard is going to get touches too, but Zeke is the more favored guy. He had almost double the snaps to Pollard in week 2. And I feel like they're going to rely on him in a grinded out type of game like this. So I love that, Bobby Stanley. I love it. I'm also on Ezekiel Elliott anytime touchdown in a spot like this. All right, let's preview the game as a whole. We're going from eating a piece of the pie to the entire pie right now. This game is kind of a pick-em, well, basically a pick-em on the Giants laying 1 point. The total extremely low at 39. And I know both of these win totals for both of these teams after 3 weeks have been adjusted to 8.5. Which team, Bobby Stanley, Prop Holiday, gets more wins in the 2022-2023 season?
I really have to know when Dak is returning, but I will say the Dallas Cowboys, as much as that irks me to say. If Dak can come back before week 6 or 7, I think the Cowboys can get to maybe 8 or 9 wins. Surprised from what I saw in Cooper Rush. I think the defense has some star potential with Diggs and Micah Parsons. I love the wide receiver core that they have, and obviously the running back duo. So if they can stay afloat until Dak comes back, I think they can get to 8 or 9 wins. And that's more than what I'm projecting for the Giants, who did get off to a hot start.
Jared, how do you feel about this? 8.5 total wins for both teams. Who wins more?
Kind of think the Giants win more. Especially if they get their pieces back defensively. Leonard Williams tonight's huge. Leonard Williams, and we were talking about it before the show because I feel like a lost puppy dog today with trying to pick a play of the day. And then I saw our buddy Clev TA, shout out, and he had in his write-up for today that Leonard Williams was going to be out. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big injury. But I do feel like there's a little juice with Brian Daboll. And the NFC East, listen, say what you want about the Eagles. Obviously, they're big, the head honcho. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in the NFC East this year to win some games. Washington is clearly down. Dallas without their best player, Dak Prescott. Maybe not. Maybe Mike Parsons is their best player, but without their best offensive player. And now you kind of get into this lull of, hey, the Giants already have 2 wins under their belt, and the Cowboys don't. So I kind of feel like this is a Giants bet. If I would say from here on out, who wins more games? Can the Cowboys outwin the Giants by 1.5 over the next 15 games? I would say no. But just for argument's sake, the under is 30-17 this year. If you just blind bet every under, that's about 64%. Pretty good.
Crazy.
And that
the
is
total for this game. Yeah, the total for this game is set at 39. Extremely low total for this game. Bobby Stanley, would you lean over or lean under and have the under sweats in a total that's set at 39, which is very, very low?
I would lean the over just because it is that low. And I think there was a stat we talked about last Thursday, something like primetime games with a total at 40 have the propensity to go over, something like 55%. The number just seems low. And the Cowboys offense proven it can move with Cooper Rush. They can establish a successful running game. As far as the Giants are concerned, Saquon Barkley's has the potential to take it to the house at any point. So I would lean over. And I think historically, their matchups have been a little bit higher scoring than 39. So give me over 39. I feel more confident than I do with the spread.
Yeah, I'll get into 39. That in a little bit.
We'll get into that a little bit later. Bobby Stanley, Prop Holiday, we so appreciate you coming on. Monday Night Football, baby. 2 offensive powerhouses going head-to-head. We can't even wait.
Happy Monday, guys. Thanks for having me.
Happy Monday. We'll see you in a couple days. That was Prop Holiday. All right, before we get into our best bets of the day and the play of the day, we have to talk about the college football weekend because a lot of wild things happened. I think between Saturday and Sunday, I was like so anxious sitting there and watching some of these games. Things that happened that we didn't even expect. So let's go into week 4 takeaways from the college football season. Undefeated teams, first of all, Jared, have fallen. Oklahoma, number 6 rated Oklahoma. Can't forget that part. Fell to Kansas State, who Kansas State lost to Tulane last week. The Big 12 could be wide open. Kansas State beats Oklahoma. Does Kansas come in and win the Big 12 at this point? Why not?
No.
They're 4-0. They're
not winning.
Crazier things have happened. Let me tell you, crazier things have happened, Rod.
I will make any bet you want right now. Any amount of money, swag, whatever you want, pies in the face, any humiliating task that Kansas does not win the Big 12. It's not happening. There's other teams that are outside of that.
I'm not that passionate about it.
Kansas State, yes.
But it's just a fun chat.
Kansas State. I think Kansas State has a chance to win the Big 12. I do. I think Texas is not there yet. I think Baylor has a chance to win the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State has a chance to win the Big 12. Kansas's defense is going to be what does them in the end. I don't think they are defensively strong enough to hold up in a conference that has some good offensive players. I mean, look who Kansas has played so far. Tennessee Tech, West Virginia. Nice win over Houston. But Houston's been down so far this year. In fact, Houston's a team that I expected to have one of the better defenses in the country, and they've given up 27 points at least in all 3 games. They gave up 35 to UTSA, 33 to Texas Tech, 48 to Kansas. They gave up 27 points to Rice. So I don't know what's going on with Houston's defense, but that's a little scary. Listen, Kansas is going to be tested in the next few weeks. Let's see what happens when they go to Oklahoma State, Baylor, Oklahoma in the next month or so, and then they finish at Kansas State. Very tough game. I think Kansas will finish under 500. Just my vibe. Or like 6-6. Okay. Like 6-6, 7-5, 5-7. That's the range that I feel Kansas is going to fit in.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the Big 12. It's going to be interesting. Number 10, Arkansas lost to Texas A&M. Cam, I've never seen this before in my entire life.
I know.
Cam Little's go-ahead field goal went a little too far to the right and hit the top of the right uprights. Can you, if you try to do that 100 times, you would probably go 0-100. To be honest with you. And now Arkansas is staring down Bama next week after losing this week to Texas A&M. And then there's a lot of teams that are trending in the right direction at this point. Number 5, Clemson. DJU had a breakout game, 5 touchdowns, and double overtime win against Wake. They have NC State next week. Battle of probably the top 2 teams in the Atlantic Division. I'm so excited for that game. And watching the Wolfpack play last week, that was obviously the game I covered. They took on UConn. They're really freaking good. Their defense is really freaking good. Having their 3 linebackers back together, they're so solid. It's Devin Leary that kind of needs to step it up and make some. He made a couple questionable throws last week against UConn that UConn obviously didn't capitalize on, but a team like Clemson is going to capitalize on. Then you look at number 11, Tennessee. Hendon Hooker, the guy that I bet to win the Heisman at the beginning of the season at 60-1 odds. He's a good player. Great performance to win against Florida, 349 yards passing, 112 yards rushing. I love this guy. I love Hendon Hooker. How do you feel about him?
Fantastic. Tennessee, the end of that game was bananas. What is Billy Napier doing? Going for 2 down 11. Someone needs to give Billy a math lesson. Here, Billy, take my glasses. You can learn how to do math. When you kick the extra point to go down 10, then you score another touchdown later in the game to go down 3. Then instead of needing a Hail Mary from the 40-yard line at the end of the game, you can try to kick a game-tying field goal. Now, college kickers, I understand the odds of probably making that field goal were low, but I would feel much better about trying a game-tying field goal from 50 yards or so than trying a Hail Mary from 50 yards or so. I feel like your odds are a little bit better to make the field goal. But Billy had a rough game at Rocky Top. Tennessee's legit. Listen, I think if you scroll through college football right now, I can give you, and I'll be honest, your Michigan Wolverines looked a little bit susceptible too.
No, I know. That's what I said. Out of the top 25, like the only 3 teams that I think are solidified and solid are the top 3. Every other position is open for business at this point. What the heck was Michigan doing the first 3 quarters of that game? Yeah, special teams look great right from the start. Obviously, like how many yard touchdown was that? Like a 75-yard whatever touchdown that it was. But no, they didn't look anything like I thought that they would look against a team like Maryland. And Maryland was the best team that they played so far this season. But that was not what I wanted to see.
You gotta give a little credit to Maryland. Give a little credit to Maryland. But also, you're right. Michigan played Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. Those 3 teams combined were outside the top 100 in schedule-adjusted efficiency on offense. So I think it was the first real test. Michigan's defense will improve. They have some really good players, but they haven't played anybody yet. Listen, there's a lot of good teams in college football this year. There's not a lot of great teams. There's not a lot of great teams. I don't even think Georgia's like great. I think they're good. I think they're the best team in the country, but I don't think they're as good as they were last year. How can you be? They lost 8 first-round picks on defense.
Can't be.
Not to say that they're not talented, but there needs to be more experience, more starch, between their toes when they're playing these games. We'll get there. We'll get there in a few weeks. These guys will gain that experience, but they're not there yet. We're only 4 games. I think Ohio State is probably better than some people think because they haven't shown it yet. They've only scored, they've only been blowing out opponents really a couple of times. They haven't really put the pedal down yet, although I think they're starting to. I'll be honest. I think Ohio State might be the best team in the country. They might be.
Wow.
They might have the best quarterback in the country.
Statement, God.
They might have, because
I agree on that.
Alabama's receivers scare me. So it's hard to say, as good as Bryce Young is, it's hard to say that he's going to have a better year than CJ Stroud because CJ Stroud has much better weapons around him. So as good as Bryce Young is, I think the Ohio State offense is better. And I think the Ohio State defense is improved. And, man, they've got some really cupcake games the next few weeks. They don't play anybody. They're going to spank Rutgers. They're going to go into Michigan State and throw all over that secondary. And then they're going to absolutely destroy Iowa at home. And then on October 29th, they play Penn State in Happy Valley. So that – I know. I'm scared for that game too, Penn State friends. But that's really the first time we're going to see Ohio State really tested. I mean, they just dropped 50 on Wisconsin like it was – no one even's talking about that game.
Yeah.
But they just –
a 50 burger
on Wisconsin, who's got a pretty decent defense, and they made it look very easy. So I think Ohio State right now, even though they've got a 3 next to their name, I think it could be a 1 very soon. I would maybe put a 1 next to their name if I had to pick right now. Yeah,
that's crazy. And can we talk about the worst losses in college football after week 4 for a second? Because Miami went into that game as a 4-touchdown favorite against Middle Tennessee. And they gave up 4 touchdowns of 69 yards plus. Tyler Van Dyke was benched. Mario Cristobal was pissed. What the heck happened in Miami? Thank God the Dolphins held up their end of the bargain and got things done. But the University of Miami Hurricanes, that hurricane rolled on in there and washed the Hurricanes out because they did not look good. And then Texas falling to Texas Tech. Now, they're now 3-7 in the Big 12 games under Steve Sarkisian. Like, that ain't great last time I checked. And I know people said that about Jim Harbaugh for a while. He doesn't win those massive Big 10 games that he needs to win. He's not winning those statement games. Can Steve Sarkisian coach them to the point where they do? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Week 5, some really good games coming up. We're going to break those down all throughout the week. That is our college football Week 4 recap. All right, before we get into our best bets of the day, guys, let's bet it. It's presented by Superbook, the best place to bet football all season long. We got Week 5 college football, Week 4 of NFL coming up. So make sure to download the Superbook app or visit superbook.com right now. And they're going to match your first bet up to $1,000, whether it wins or whether it loses. Plus, they already have lines up for every single NFL game for the rest of the season. The #1 voted sportsbook in Vegas. It's now available right in the palm of your hand. Visit superbook.com to join. All right, our best bets of the day, Jared. And I know we're looking at the final game of Week 3 in the NFL. Cowboys taking on the Giants in Dallas. 3-star play of the day is online, Pickswise.com. Who do we got?
Saquon Barkley, anytime touchdown. I don't know who is actually picking this. It says just the Pickswise as the capper. Usually it's a person. I don't know if it's a collective bet based off of the Pickswise editors.
I like it.
Saquon Barkley plus money, anytime touchdown. I mean, he's looked good through the first couple of weeks. So 21 carries, bunch of red zone touches, average 9 yards per carry with a $164 in the season opener. I mean, he didn't score last week. I think this is a good bet. Plus money for Saquon, I think that's fair.
I love it. I'm actually betting Saquon Barkley for my play of the day. And I know we were discussing this before. So my play of the day is over 107.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Got that at -114. If you're feeling really frisky and you want to get this at plus money, you could do a same game parlay of over 77.5 rush yards parlayed with over 23.5 receiving yards, and you get that at plus 234. If you're feeling a little risky, you want to risk it for the biscuit, I'm probably going to bet it. But my best bet of the day is over 107.5 rushing plus receiving yards. And like you said, Jared, he's looked really good. He has the chance to hit this number on the ground alone. He had 164 rushing yards against the Titans in week 1 or 164. Yeah, thank you. 164 rushing yards in week 1 against the Titans plus 30 receiving yards. And that's basically double what this prop number is at this point. I know last week he had a little bit of aggression, 88 yards on the ground with more touches, but maybe this number being 107.5 is a little bit of an overreaction. I think we're going to see somewhere in the middle of 88 and 194 that he had from week 2 and week 1. I also look at the Cowboys defense, and Saquon could take advantage of this. I know Leonard Fournette had 137 total yards this past week. Joe Mixon had 83 yards last week. And I look at the Giants offense and their usage of a guy like Saquon Barkley, right? They run their offense through him. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He only needs a couple breakaway plays to be able to hit this number. Why not? Over 107.5 receiving plus rushing yards, -114 if you're feeling spicy. Over 77.5 rush yards parlayed with over 23.5 receiving yards at plus 234. How do you feel about it? We feel good about Saquon.
I do feel good about Saquon tonight. And you bring a very valid, so that's a good question to ask about the difference between your bet, 107 rush receiving yards, and parlaying the rush receiving yards combo together to get that plus 2 whatever. I think if I was betting this, I would choose your play of the day over the parlay, because I would feel sick to my stomach if he busted like 100-yard reception and only ran for like 50 yards. You know,
that would suck.
Like, yeah, like, and it could go the other way too. Like, he could bust like an 80-yard run and only receive 20, or an 85-yard run. Like, you get my point. Like, the risk of ruin when you're making a parlay like that is higher. So if it's like a play of the day, I would feel safer about your handicap just putting it, combining them together.
Combining those bad boys together, not needing to hit 2 numbers individually.
Exactly. And it is it's harder to hit a parlay, period. Listen, and the books clean up on those parlays, especially the same game parlays. They love. Let's just leave it at this. I'm sure the sports books, and that's why you're getting offered that number, I'm sure they would rather you parlay it.
Totally. I mean, that's how you're getting it plus 234, because it seems like, ooh, I'm getting it at plus money for basically the same number, or even a little bit less, because 77.5 plus 23.5, my math is correct, that's only 100. Do the math for me, please. 101 yard, 101 total yards.
Wait, give me the variables again. I was not paying attention.
77.5 plus 23.5. That is
That's
101.
101.
So you're looking at 107.5 receiving and rush yards, and you're like, wow, I'm buying myself 6 yards, but it's like 2 numbers have to hit to be able to do that, whereas
Exactly.
only 1 number has to hit.
You're not really buying yourself 6 yards.
Yeah.
You're kind of you're
Totally.
you're still making 2 separate bets that both have to hit individually. Now, are they correlated? Yes, they absolutely are correlated. If you hit one, you're likely to hit this. Like if one of his props, receiving or rushing, goes over the total tonight, it is very correlated to you hitting this 107.5.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how risky you're feeling. If you want to risk more, you go for the parlay. And that's our audience has to be the one that makes their own decisions. You can only bring a horse to water. You can't make people drink it. You can only give them the advice, and then they're the ones that have to click submit on their bet. Speaking of clicking submit on a bet, I was not loving this game tonight.
Nobody is.
But then I read TA's write-up, and he made some very valid points for the over. And so I am hopping on Clev TA's over. Again, he writes up the Monday night and the Thursday night games for Pickswise.com. He does a fantastic job, professional gambler, really good with the NFL ATS contest picks, really good with his prop, analysis. So I trust when he's betting an over, especially considering how weird and wacky these games have been, then I give a little starch to it. So we're going over 39 here in this game. I got a good number, flat 39 in this one. You can shop around. There's some 39.5s out there, but shop around. You can find a 39 if you look hard enough. And listen, when you talk about the handicap of this game, the best defensive player on the Giants is out tonight, or doubtful. So doubtful that Leonard Williams is going to play. Ojulari and Thibodeau are back, but they're playing in their first game. Thibodeau's a rookie, playing in his actual first game. So we'll see how effective they are against the Cowboys' offensive line. That's pretty solid. I hear Jason Peters is going to suit up tonight. That's a plus. This is a Cowboys offensive line that's created some holes earlier in the season. Cooper Rush has looked a little bit better than expected. Daniel Jones has done some good things. He shredded Tennessee's defense. And as good as the Giants' defense was last week, that was against Baker Mayfield at home. Now they go on the road where they face a really good running offense, and I could see there being sustained drives in this game. Do those drives end in points? I pray to the over gods that they do. Once things get in the red zone, it seems like that's where all hell breaks loose. But great nugget here by Clev. Since 2015, totals of 39 or less in division games, 20 and 14 of the over. So when two teams know each other very well and the total's really low, expecting a low total game, almost 60% of the time, those totals go over. One other nugget here, Micah Parsons, amazing player, probably the best player on the field at all times, mispracticed almost all week with an illness. I don't know what that illness is, but if it's the illness that my dog's been having for the last few days, pooping all over the floor, might not be 100% for Micah Parsons tonight. And also Michael Gallup, the best deep threat receiver on the Cowboys roster, is back. That is huge. It adds another element of risk to this Cowboys offense that the Giants defense has to prepare for. And I feel like at 39, I mean, can we get like a pick six or something, some fluky play? Instead of all the ridiculous plays that end in sacks and fumbles, let's get one returned to the house for a touchdown and get some points on the board. After last night's 11-10 snooze fest, we need some points, NFL. Give us some points. Over 39, Giants Cowboys tonight, Monday night.
Points. And that is the end of all of our points for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Find us at the Pickswise. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter, Jared Smith. I'm Lauren Jabara. Best of luck tonight, guys. See you tomorrow, week 3. Finishes up tonight. Peace.